Calling to order this information session of the Budget and Finance, Transportation and Infrastructure, and Planning and Zoning Committees. We do have a presentation today on the Transportation Improvement Program Implementation Team's update pursuant to Resolution 2024-880. We didn't have anyone sign up for a public comment, so we're going to jump right into the presentation. To my understanding, it's about 15 minutes long. Once the presentation concludes, we will go into questions from the body. And if you could introduce yourself and you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair Timms. Good afternoon. I'm Michael Briggs, Deputy Chief Program Officer for the Choose How You Move program in Mayor Freddie O'Connell's office. And I've got our Chief Program Officer, Sabrina Sussman, with us today. And we're going to give a brief update and recap of what's happened in the past year with Choose How You Move implementation. We had an advisory committee for transportation meeting earlier today. And the goal would be to ensure, as we have those committee meetings for the Choose How You Move program, that we come back to council and do a similar update going forward. Vice Mayor Henderson has requested that, so we will try to align that in the upcoming year. I think we mentioned we'll try to be brief, so what you're seeing this afternoon is a bit of a truncated version of what we went through with the advisory committee today. And hopefully we'll answer some questions that you may be pondering. So I want to start out because this is a huge leap, really, for Metro government implementing the Choose How You Move program. Call it the new transportation era. And it's just a scale of investment unlike anything we've seen in Nashville before. Just using one metric, and this is not meant to shape any perceptions as to how we've been doing business in Nashville, but it's to indicate the scale of this program work. When you look at NDOT's annual capital budget, it averages about $75 million a year. And then when you look at the capital projects that are in the Choose How You Move program and simply divide them out over the years, it ends up being over $200 million per year. That is not how we intend to implement the program. It can be that in some years we have a higher scale of capital improvements, but this is just to demonstrate that this is not a little bit of an uptick and impact to how we operate metro-wide, but it's a pretty big leap. And so this program is going to deliver some long-needed infrastructure that many of our residents have asked for, and that's why it's built on those past plans that have been conducted over the past 15 years. The other thing that you're going to hear us talk about is a collaborative model. If you were here at the East Bank ad hoc meeting last week, we talked about this because we're looking at street designs that are block by block. It's responding to needs and data that changes along the corridor. And it's also building on a continuous improvement approach where you'll see some short or midterm improvements in the near future on some of these corridors that will result in a final design being delivered. And we'll be coming back and talking to you more about what that looks like, but you'll see some of that approach embedded in our presentation today. So this is just a reminder of where we've been. We went from referendum being passed by voters on November 5th of last year to ribbon cutting exactly on November 5th of this year. And so this is the ribbon cutting at the Edge of Lake Q-jump lane. We were not able to implement the half-cent sales tax sales charge, that's a mouthful, until February of this year. So that's when money started coming into the program. There were 11 foundational projects that were set out in a supplemental budget. And then we got to work. In the springtime, WEGO began expanding service operations. There was advisory committee meetings. Going into the summer, additional expansion involving the Journey Pass pilot starting as well. And then a $104 million capital drawdown that I'll talk a bit more about. And then you'll see in the green box, that's where we have planning underway. trying to align on sidewalk, signal delivery, the all-access corridor, and some of the fiber projects. So one thing that you probably don't hear us talk a lot about, but is really critical to how we deliver our program, centers around transparency and partnership, really amongst the agencies that are listed on the screen. This really outlines how we're all going to work together moving forward and beginning to establish roles and responsibilities. So all of that work is underway, and you'll see components of that kind of come to light over the upcoming months. And we'll be sharing more about some stuff we'll be doing with TDOT as well in the coming weeks. So on to some of the exciting stuff. So you've got at your chair your council district list. These were available when we came to you all a couple of months ago to talk about the capital drawdown, and we had an opportunity to go through questions. But we wanted to make sure you were aware still of what's happening in your district, and then cover a few things as to how we're moving forward into early next year. So with sidewalks and signals, this funded mostly construction of 14 sidewalk projects in 10 neighborhoods. So these were projects that had planning and design complete and now are moving into construction. On the signal front, this includes fiber expansion along many of our corridors and pikes, and there's a map that's also at your chair that outlines that with the gold flags on those corridors. And then there's 115 intersections that are part of upgrades in downtown. It's combining with some signal upgrades that are already in the works downtown, and then expanding those signal upgrades along Nolensville Pike and Harding Place. Then involving service, there is exploring how we connect better to the airport. So that study and work is underway. There's bus fleet expansion as well, with the arrival of those likely in 2027 and 2028. And then another key step is getting a maintenance and operations facility and site located as WEGO begins to expand the bus fleet and then also starts ramping up for a longer service span of hours, and then eventually working towards 24/7 on some of those main corridors in the future. That new maintenance facility is really important to get underway. And then finally, with safety, there's complete streets work on Edge Hill that will be underway. Also, some planning and design work for mobility lanes downtown that continues the conversation there and is really critical to improving mobility within the downtown core. There's additional funding to plan for the space upgrades involving the Transit Safety Division, and then the all-access corridors, beginning to undertake the study along Gallatin and Maine and along Nolensville, and then showing a proof of concept on West End with the bus lane pilot. So you've got this map that shows where these projects are located. Within your district, you've got a district list as well. I think what's really important for us is that you help us carry this message and carry back feedback to us as well, because we want to ensure residents understand what's coming their way. They understand some of the components of the Choose How You Move program and how it may impact them. So if you have questions as to how we're presenting this, where to find information, that would be really helpful to us. So as we continue to do updates like this in the future, we're prepared to help guide and direct the best way possible. So want to highlight just a few things that came through some of the implementation. So you probably heard recently about the Journey Pass program. And we started our first free fare program. This is providing a no-cost access to transit for eligible residents. And it's usually qualifying through housing and nutrition assistance programs. So phase one was coordinating with those partners in our existing social service programs. And then in phase two, we still have to come a income eligibility program. So anyone that does not immediately qualify for some of the other existing social service programs, there's another way for them to access WeGo through the Journey Pass program. One reminder, though, is the state Department of Human Services, their SNAP program participants can register at any time, at any event in the future. They just need to show the proof of current enrollment. And so that's how they can get into the Journey Pass program. Just a few updates related to statistics. This is actually updated information from what we shared this morning with the advisory committee. So we've had over 6,700 registrations into the Journey Pass program at over 40 events. And we estimate it being about $15 million worth of transportation assistance that will be provided to those in the Journey Pass program over the next 3 years. Another project that I want to highlight as part of implementation is on Friday, Mayor O'Connell was in the Traffic Management Center with NDOT staff and announced phase 1 deployment of activity on Lebanon Pike. Those are signal improvements that were not funded through the Choose How You Move program, but they're a good example of the types of improvements we anticipate with Choose How You Move funding in the future involving signal corridor work. This includes laying fiber and allowing the signals to become fully adaptive and communicate with new software, and then also tied into a traffic management center. Future corridors are part of this work. So when you look at the map, you'll see some yellow flags that show some of those other corridors that are also highlighted in your council districts. We won't show this animation just to save on time this afternoon, but hopefully you've seen the animation around the Q jump when that was done back on November 5th to explain how simple technology and a little bit of space can really help keep our bus system on time. And so that's a really good example of how improvements such as Q jumps, some dedicated lanes, transit signal priority, really improve transit system reliability and frequency overall. Also, there's a good animation on smart signals that show how the signal system is outdated and coming online really to work for our modern needs in the future. In both instances, these are cases where we have midterm or short-term improvements to be done that will then be carried forward as we continue to do full corridor work on our all-access corridors. Finally, I just want to give a quick sneak peek to what will be coming forward in the next year. So as we get into 2026, we have a workshop with the State Department of Transportation this week. So it's staff that's working between metro agencies and TDOT to talk through what the all-access corridors look like, how Choose How You Move can meet some of the common outcomes that both the city and the state would like to achieve on the corridors. We expect that conversation to be positive going into the new year. We also have procurement ramping up within both agencies, so within Metro and within WeGo, to get some of the corridor planning work off the ground and some of the other essential elements to Choose How You Move. So you'll hear more about the main Gallatin planning work and some of the Nolensville all-access corridor planning work in the near future. So I'm now going to toss it over to Sabrina to give a quick update on a little bit of the committee work this morning and what has resulted in some values they've been discussing.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. And so for context, we first convened the Advisory Committee on Transportation in June for the first meeting and began hearing the stories of the 15 people that comprise the committee, each with a very different perspective representing different parts of our community. At that point, even before sort of really starting in my role and shortly after Michael rejoined Metro in his role, really wanted to sort of hear from them their expectations, their understanding, the things that they were looking for. We next convened them in September, and we, instead of doing a conference room meeting, we decided to take them out on a bus tour. And so we actually toured a lot of the county, taking a look both at projects that we knew would be coming up soon and projects that we knew would have a longer tail, but very specifically wanted folks to start to see a glossary of the challenges that we're going to be facing with Choose How You Move. You know, folks coming from different parts of the community, when they closed their eyes, they imagined one part of Chime, Choose How You Move, but maybe they didn't imagine another community's part. And so really being able to walk all of them through the full depth of the program, I thought brought a lot of additional understanding. So our third convening was this morning, and really tried to focus in on some of the more existential, what is the purpose of the committee? How do we convene? What are the roles and responsibilities and leadership? It was really great to see folks kind of coming in with the background shared from prior meetings and from their own diligence over the past several months. We went back to the executive order, as well as referenced, obviously, the bodies of work from council on the committee, reiterating on purpose and driving folks back together on the ways in which we would convene. I'm very excited to announce that we did conclude elections. Chair of the Advisory Committee on Transportation will be Walter Searcy. Vice Chair is Clay Haynes, both nominated by others on the committee for their leadership and unique perspectives. And I think they bring an interesting balance on different parts of the community to leadership. We are looking forward to working with them. The last exercise we did with them this morning was really to sort of take a dive into their responsibility towards Chime, Choose How You Move, the implementation values that will guide our work, guide our projects. And the way that we embarked on this was to say, what are the outcomes we are hoping to achieve through our project implementation? So this is less about how we will work together, less collaboration values, much more implementation and outcome values. So if you start with the goal in mind, what's the goal? And so did a round robin exercise collecting both their visions of success, their visions of what might lead us to be, to take a little longer to find that success, and really trying to dig in what their vision was for the program. And what you see in front of you are the top 9 that they raised. I will make one edit to the slide that is before you that is not meant to say increase roadway capacity, that is meant to say increase mobility network capacity. Very important modification I would make. And really got a chance to have really important conversations about why these are the values that shall govern our work moving forward. And so these will serve as a bedrock when we start thinking about engagement on some of our larger corridor projects, when we start thinking about how do we measure success. These are really going to serve at the bedrock of that at the direction of the committee. And with that, we are happy to take any questions. I'll also just maybe acknowledge that we are surrounded by many talented colleagues off to my right-hand shoulder from several of the implementing agencies who are also here to help answer any questions you might have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just start off with one. Y'all had mentioned the airport access study, that work being underway. What are we thinking, like, will we get a report out of that? Will we get kind of a menu of recommendations? Will we get, is there going to be involvement from airport authority on that? Like, how is that shaping up? And when can we expect to hear something from that? And what form do you think that something might take?
Great question. So a couple of things. I don't, and apologies maybe if one of us misspoke, I don't believe we're preparing sort of a study or a report in the artifact sense. What we are doing is sitting down and working through with the airport and of course our colleagues from WeGo on what those outcomes that we're looking for are. It's certainly a priority of this administration to increase frequency. And I've had many, many conversations with many of you on that topic. And so we're starting there. Several of us actually are going over tomorrow for another tour of BNA to really look at some of the space and be able to have a little bit more context and conversation on the transit user experience. But we are certainly hoping to continue to have a positive relationship with the airport. Know that frequency is very high on the list for things we'd like to tackle.
Thank you.
Councilman Coopin.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for everyone. We've got a superstar team in the room, so thank you for all that y'all are doing with this. I've been meaning to ask this for some time, and I think I've gotten sort of an answer, but We've heard that the corridors that the boring company tunnel is going under then precludes us from doing Choose How You Move projects above on the roadway. Am I correct in understanding that, and what's causing that kind of conflict?
I don't know if that would be the language that I would use. I've talked about this a little bit, whereas, the TIP had a notional schedule that was locked in April of 2024. That was sort of based on the information that we had at the time. And so when I came down here and we started thinking about where we were going to kick off corridor work, we realized it had been over a year since that schedule had been evaluated. And so there were lots of factors at play. We wanted to really right-size the schedule for today's world. Many things have changed, both at the federal level, the state level, the local level. And so we embarked on that prioritization process that led us to focus on Nolensville, Gallatin, and of course, some of the key corridors downtown. There are lots of factors that went into that, including things like safety data and considerations that we had around concerns on Nolensville. I think we get lots of questions about the boring project. And as you've heard members of this administration say, for us, we're treating it like another development project. It's certainly a thing that's unfolding, but our commitment to Choose How You Move and implementing that is really going to continue to keep us moving in the directions that we've prioritized.
Thank you. So just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, if at some point we wanted to do BRT or something down Murfreesboro Pike, we could still do that, and the boring company would have no impact on that other than being a consideration from a strategic planning perspective.
Certainly, the state's pursuit of this project does not in any way impact Murfreesboro's place as an all-access corridor in Chime. So Murfreesboro is still very much on the list. We will very much get there. We'll very much do sort of the nuanced process that Michael spoke of, evaluating the corridor to figure out what we need. That is not at all impacted.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Porterfield. I see you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Coopin actually asked part of my question. It's like he was reading my mind over here. So thank you for teeing that up. I appreciate that explanation. I'm having a very hard time coming to grips with that explanation. Many of us advocated for Nolensville Pike to be moved up on the prioritization list. When we looked at the prioritization, we felt that Nolensville Pike was way too far down, and we were told all of these reasons why it could not be prioritized. We pushed back. You all made an agreement to do your best to up that prioritization. I appreciate that. At the same time, Murfreesboro Pike, which has the highest ridership, seemed to be the #1 corridor that we were focusing on. And now what we're hearing today is that this project from the state is not going to have any impact on it, but suddenly Murfreesboro Pike has moved down in prioritization and Nolensville Pike has moved up. And again, I'm thankful that Nolensville Pike has moved up, but I cannot understand how the #1 corridor has now moved down without a valid explanation as to when we're going to prioritize that and how it moved from being the #1 spot. So I would appreciate a better explanation as well as a timeline of when we're looking at Murfreesboro Pike, because I don't understand how the #1 ridership is pushed down.
Completely understood, and I welcome other folks to chime in. I certainly didn't mean to say, if I did, that the boring project didn't have any impact on this. There certainly is, but it's not a one-factor decision. We actually spent a lot of time consolidated across all of the agencies looking at a long list of considerations. And frankly, the fact that the conversation around Nolensville had happened during the TIP development and outreach process was a part of that. I certainly wasn't here for that, but it is a thing that I heard a lot about upon arriving here, is that there was concern around moving that community down to sort of the bottom where it was in the notional schedule. And so I do think that part of the effort was to be responsive to some of that feedback. Again, since I wasn't here at the time, I can't speak to sort of how all of that unfolded prior to the TIP needing to be published for the referendum. I very much understand. I think we really tried to evaluate where we'd be able to move most swiftly with our partners at the state. And so as you probably know, 89% of our all-access corridors are state routes. We do not have final design authority. We don't have final permit authority. The state does. And so in evaluating the full network of where we thought we'd be able to partner most efficiently, most effectively early, Nolensville, Gallatin, and the downtown corridors came up. The other thing that we did that was really important was stack rank TDOT's 3-year and 10-year plans with our work. It behooves us to align our design work and our reconstruction work with some of the priorities that they've already laid out. They're further along in planning those two plans than we have been on a schedule for Choose How You Move. So evaluating those in discussions with them is part of how we landed on scheduling those 3 corridors early. We have not further scheduled. So it could be that Murfreesboro would be next, but we haven't sort of embarked on that next step, ma'am.
So for next, what is for transparency, are we talking about now like 1 year, 2 year, 5 year? Because when we were having this conversation about Nolensville Pike, that was going to be several years down the pipeline. So now if there are 3 projects that are going ahead of the number 1 ridership, then that sounds like that's going to be 7 to 10 years out before Murfreesboro Road is hit and it has the number 1 ridership. So I cannot wrap my head around this. Does not make sense to me. So I'm trying to understand.
Right. I don't believe it'll be 7 to 10 years. We don't have a schedule. In the notional schedule that listed Nolensville originally, it had Nolensville as the last of the 10 corridors. So I don't anticipate that to be the case for Murfreesboro. Again, we haven't picked corridor 4, but part of what we realized is doing a program of this scale over 15 years means you can't just tackle 1 corridor. And so that's why we are trying to initiate across the 3. That includes needing to build out teams that can support that work across the different parts of the county. So I can't commit to a specific timeline for Murfreesboro, but it is very, very much still a high priority for us to embark on as soon as we can. I know that that's a frustrating piece of the reality, but we really tried to balance all the different issues with the state and other things.
I appreciate your very diplomatic answer as to why the Murfreesboro Pike corridor is being slowed down, even though it has the number 1 ridership. I'm very frustrated about that. And it's just very funny to me that before this project, it was number 1. Now that this project is being announced with the state, all of a sudden it has dropped down. That is a negative impact on our constituents. That's a negative impact on the riders of the 55. And I will stop here, Chair. Thank you.
I think the one other thing I would just say is that this does not mean we will not be doing work on Murfreesboro. Part of what Michael briefed on the EBDA ad hoc committee meeting last week and a little bit that he touched on this afternoon is this idea of continuous improvement. And so NDOT is actively doing work on Murfreesboro. That work will continue and will continue to pursue shorter term fixes and shorter term opportunities. You know, frankly, a Q jump's a really great example of something that can have a big impact on the 55 ridership without the full all access corridor work undergoing.
All right, next in the queue, I have Councilman Druffel, then I have Allen after that. Councilman Cap, I thought I saw your hand, no hand, okay, you're out of there. Councilwoman Swara and Councilwoman Ellis, so Councilman Druffel.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Can you give me some sense of the directional from the west, Harding and Charlotte? I don't see anything on the plans. And, you know, just a quick note, between 440 and Whitebridge, it's pretty much full traffic, and yet there's no plan on this that shows any sense of direction. And there's only 2 corridors coming from the west, and it's growing significantly, Charlotte and Harding, and yet, again, nothing that says there's any engagement there. So can you give me a heads up?
Thank you, Councilman. Certainly. So a few things. On West End, I briefly just mentioned that we'll be looking at the dedicated bus lane between 17th Avenue and 25th. So that begins to take you a little bit further west. It's closer into downtown by Vanderbilt's campus. As you move from there, there are service upgrades that are in the program as well. I think if you look in January, there may be a few tweaks that are identified as you get out to Bellevue. On Charlotte, there is some discussion right now west of White Bridge as to when the Complete Streets project would be implemented in that area with TDOT, because it initially was identified on TDOT's plan, was removed. There's a water project that needs to be done, and so we're trying to coordinate pieces there on the Charlotte Pike corridor west of White Bridge.
Can you comment on Harding, since it's pretty much nonstop traffic between White Bridge and 440?
Yeah, so I don't have, unfortunately, in front of me some of the fiber expansion plans, and I know Jesse's in the room and might be able to speak a little bit more on that, if where that is in the queue. Sorry, and if you want to, Jesse, come up to the microphone.
If you could introduce yourself and then you have the floor.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Jesse Turner with the Metro ITS Department. So along Charlotte and West End, we're currently working with TDOT on a couple different projects, or with NDOT rather, on a couple of different projects extending fiber out to those areas. What the fiber is going to allow us to do is deploy the technology enhancements, things like adaptive signaling, the transportation priority signaling as well for the buses. But there are some challenges, especially going out toward West End, where the existing infrastructure that's in the ground for telecommunications cabling, specifically for Metro, that those conduit networks have been crushed. Previous projects many years ago failed to recognize that conduit was in the right-of-way, and where a lot of the decorative lighting and the poles were placed out there, they managed to drill down through various parts of the conduit system. So as part of that project, we are actually looking at, and we are working with an engineering group to do the design plans now to replace that conduit throughout that area so that we can get that fiber reinstalled out there and start deploying those advanced technologies.
Just a point of clarification, is that West End or Harding?
That is West End.
So no comment on Harding yet?
We do have some fiber facilities that are making their way out toward Harding, coming back around from Murfreesboro direction, and then headed back out toward Harding.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I apologize. I don't have those specific plans in front of me.
And finished question, if that's okay, Chair. When will we see some kind of improvement in the West, since there doesn't seem to be any here?
Well, I think, again, it's just depending on what element of infrastructure that you're asking about. So like with fiber expansion, some of that's really important to get the connections in from downtown where it's being extended to then make the connection further west. And then on some of the infrastructure work, some of the sidewalk, complete street work that was identified would be coming up in the 5 to 10 year time frame.
So within 5 years, we won't have anything really incremental, according to the plans I see going on.
We just haven't gotten to a point with the program where we have staged all elements out. So what you're seeing right now is some of the very first pieces of the program that we're able to confidently move forward with. So that doesn't mean the other elements that were identified as part of the whole referendum package are not important. It's just these first elements are the ones, kind of the key foundational things to get off the ground.
Okay, I eventually like to get more if you project out at some point so we can at least tell constituents someday you'll get something.
I think one other thing I would just add is the way that we are structuring the program, there is an early focus on sidewalks and signals, hoping to really get through those 86 miles and 592 signals early. And so for all of those in the West, I don't imagine it would be as long as you'd prescribed. We're really trying to focus on those in the first couple years, if that's helpful.
All right, Councilwoman Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got 3 unrelated questions. So picking up on the West End, I'm excited that the fiber is coming out that way. Two questions. Will that be in the in the street or in the right-of-way? And we've just planted a lot of wonderful trees. Thank you, Metro Water. How are y'all coordinating with not damaging trees? I think that's a question for Mr. Turner.
So as we start to work those design plans, we'll be working, that fiber out toward West End is more than likely going to go underneath the sidewalk. And so what we'll do is we'll set an offset far enough and work with the various departments. Metro Water, I think the arborist is resident with Metro Water. So we'll coordinate with Metro Water and the arborist there to make sure that as we're doing land into design for the conduit, that we are doing it in a way that we can avoid any damage to the trees as much as possible. There may have to be some exceptions, but without actually seeing the plans and what the offset from the trees are, I couldn't speak directly to that.
Gotcha.
Right
I appreciate y'all paying attention because I'll be showing up and throwing myself in front of the bulldozer.
Absolutely.
Just plan on it. And then on to the bus to the airport. I appreciate the fact that that is continuing to be part of the discussion. Frequency is fantastic. Can you talk a little bit maybe about directness? And is it possible that some of those will just go straight down the interstate and get people there quickly, or will they all sort of wander?
I'd maybe open it up to see if Steve or Amanda wants to take.
If you could introduce yourself first, and then you have the floor.
Steve Bland, CEO, WeGo Public Transit. The current plan would have upgrades to the existing route, but 3 additional routes serving the airport, including the 52 Nolensville Pike, which would kind of extend from its current terminus at the sheriff's facility. The 55 Murfreesboro Pike, which would be along Donaldson Pike off Murfreesboro, and then a new route connecting to Donaldson Transit Center in the Opry Mills area. So much straighter line routing. Most frequent would be eventually the 55 at 15 minutes, 52 at 20 minutes, and the 18 consistently at 30 minutes.
I mean, that's the frequency, or is that the length of the trip to the end?
Frequency.
That's the frequency. Okay, that's excellent. I just would love to keep directness in the conversation. You know, if there could be an express every so often, that may be a...
We look at that. We found we were running the expresses. We actually lost ridership. And part of it was the unreliability of I-40 at times. So with a lot of the work that NDOT and Metro IT are doing in some of the arterials and the SMART grant project we're working on with headway management, we think we can actually provide a much more reliable, predictable trip in the main arterials.
Great.
And also serve multiple purposes. For instance, we know Second Harvest is opening a new facility along Donaldson Pike that will be along the extension of the 52.
Great, good answers. All right, I appreciate that. And then the final one is dealing with the signals. Is it possible that technology is going to get us to where we can do that with Wi-Fi instead of fiber somewhere and use existing stuff that's already been put out there?
That's actually a very good question. Unfortunately, the difference in the requirements for the adaptive signaling as far as that service needing to be real time, Wi-Fi has too much of a delay in order for us to be able to use Wi-Fi. So being able to get those split-second timing decisions, which is critical for the adaptive signaling, even for the transportation priority for the buses, is what makes that system work as well as it does. So the only way we can actually get that split-second timing is with the fiber communications. It's just a much faster medium and far more reliable than cellular network is.
Okay. Next in the queue, I have Councilwoman Suara, then Ellis, Parker, and Benedict. Councilwoman Suara.
Thank you, Chair. I originally didn't have any question except for one, but I do share the frustration that Councilmember Porterfield started with. And I think for those of us that pushed for the Nolensville corridor to be pushed up, it was the same reason as the Murfreesboro Pike. It's because of the ridership and the need there that made them a priority for a lot of us. So it wasn't supposed to be either or one or the other. My question is, the priority list has been shared. Is that written in stone? Is there still opportunity to consider Murfreesboro in there? I don't want to believe is the advocacy for Nolensville that pushed Murfreesboro off, because it will be the same reason for both of them. I really don't believe that. I do believe that the tunnel and all of that has something huge to do with it. But considering the people that are there and the same set of folks similar, is that written in stone? Is there still opportunity to push that up?
Great question. And again, as I sort of said, there were many factors, and the boring project was certainly one of them, just not the sole factor. We are moving forward with Nolensville, Gallatin, and some of the downtown areas. That's what's funded in the 104 million drawdown that we did in October. But beyond that, we have not written any rest of the schedule in stone. And so what comes after that and at what time we embark on that work is all still work to discuss.
Okay, and I do hear you saying that you haven't decided on the 4th. And so I'm
Correct.
just making that if there's an argument to push Nolensville up, there's even a strong argument to push Murfreesboro up because of the ridership.
I know you won't be alone in feeling that way. I share that.
Yeah, because I mean, when it comes to choose out you move, the biggest thing is the transit, is the
Yes.
buses, and is the ridership. That's
Absolutely.
the bottom line. So I think making that a priority will help. So thank you. The second question that I have may be for MTA, and that's with the Journey Pass program. I know that when we had the drop in federal funding and we have the SNAP issue, one of the concerns that we had was how people can get access and get processed very fast. And the eligibility question came up in terms of people having to prove their eligibility before they can get the Journey Pass. I thought we'd find a way around it where we have agencies that can, because some people don't have their passes on them. And so in the presentation, that was still a requirement. And so I just wanted to check, do we have, going forward, have we mitigated all the risks that make sure that somebody just does not get it because they're not carrying that card with them?
Is that a question or a statement? Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, Amanda Vandergrift, Deputy CEO at WeGo. Thank you for the question. Yes, that is absolutely something we've been working towards. And now we are very happy to say that we can open every registration event to SNAP recipients because our staff at WeGo is now trained to verify SNAP recipients right at our registration event. So that's a great advancement since we talked with you guys last month. So yes, you still need to provide proof, but now there's various ways, including calling the SNAP number, verifying with their application online. There's various ways. So we've not had to turn people away at this point because we didn't have the right information. If they're a valid SNAP recipient, we're able to do that.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Councilwoman Ellis.
Thank you. Sorry, I was unsure of where to start. So I just want to clear the deck and say, for me and the constituents that I represent, this whole choose how you move is feeling like a bait and switch, okay? So I want to start with a couple of questions. I'm going to try to limit myself, Chair, to 3 questions.
Okay.
And then if we have time, I'd ask if you'd come back around to me. Can you hear me, Ms. Sussman? Okay. The first question I have is Murfreesboro Pike was sold to voters as a top priority. It is the highest ridership in the system. Why has it been deprioritized? And when did the administration know the state's tunnels project would conflict with the voter-approved plans?
Thank you for the question. So a couple of things. As I sort of mentioned earlier, in August, we commenced a scheduling process to sort of figure out where we would begin on the all-access corridors. We had the notional schedule that passed in the TIP because the TIP was required to sort of lay out a potential schedule, but that was never sort of seen as the final schedule. We went through and looked at a bunch of factors. One of many of those factors was working with TDOT, and there was a couple different elements to that. So what projects they are running there, obviously the boring tunnel became a part of that. But we did not make the decision to reprioritize lightly, and we did not make it only on one factor, as I've shared. In looking at all of the data, we looked at things like the impact that starting with downtown would have, the fact that Main Gallatin design work was furthest along because of some prior work that had already been done. Things like that were other items that helped us get to the first three, Nolensville being one of that. It certainly, I think, understand the frustration about reprioritizing Nolensville ahead of Murfreesboro, but that's where we landed as part of the prioritization discussion.
I see. Second of three questions. Did the administration know that the boring company's interest in Murfreesboro Pike was something of relevance before the referendum? And if so, why wasn't that disclosed to voters?
So I certainly can't speak on behalf of the administration during the referendum.
Is there someone here that can?
Mr. Rosenberg?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilmember, no, we were not aware of it at the time of the referendum.
Okay. So just to clarify for the record, Mayor O'Connell nor anyone in his office was aware of the boring company's interest in Murfreesboro Pike prior to the November transit referendum.
Here.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. No, we did not know that they were going to move forward with any sort of plan that involved Murfreesboro Pike.
I'm sorry, you said moving forward. I asked, did you all have any knowledge, or did you know that this was?
Nobody that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, Ms. Sussman, can you tell me what percentage of funds collected to date have gone to actual construction versus planning, design, and administration?
Great question. I don't know the number offhand. I'm going to turn to my finance person. Amanda just stepped out. I don't have that number handy, ma'am, but one of the things we tried to do is part of the 104 that you see here.
I'm sorry, is her deputy or someone else not here that can answer that?
I think they just stepped out to see if they could grab her. Yeah. So, ma'am, do you want to repeat the question for her?
I certainly will. What percentage of, I'm sorry, can you hear me? Okay. What percentage of funds collected to date have gone to actual construction versus planning, design, and administration?
So I'm bringing up the report. In terms of dollars executed, we're still in a lot of those planning phases and actually haven't executed many of those dollars. So we can capture in terms of the drawdown that we're talking about, how much is directed towards planning and how much is directed for construction. But of the CSP, or sorry, not CSP, as a supplemental that we did in the spring, most of that went to buses. So I would call, like capital buses of that amount, nearly, 75% was on the ground.
I'm sorry, when you say buses, does that mean buying new buses?
Yes.
Adding routes?
Well, it's net new buses for the system, so it would be adding service.
Both. There'd be purchases of new buses, and obviously we've spent operational dollars on expanding service. It's on the 104 breakdown that you have in front of you, I think a good example is under the signals category, the 11.5 million for fiber. That lists design, construction, and implementation. So it's a little hard to give just a specific number off the bat because a lot of these categories, in some cases, we wanted to fund all three of those things to get to construction, but some of those dollars obviously are going to design and planning. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it doesn't. Let me ask a different way, and I want to be respectful of everyone else's time and questions, but so you all had announced the Lebanon Pike corridor getting the smart signals. So is the fiber installation already completed for those to come up online?
Great question. So the implementation of the smart signals, the announcement that we made on Friday, that itself is not Choose How You Move dollars. What we talked about is that was prior dollars that NDOT had been working towards. Choose How You Move funding is what is going to fund the fiber that will lay. When you there are several components to new smart signals, and you can run them without fiber. They are at their best, as we like to say, when the fiber is there. And so that's the choose how you move component that will get done for Lebanon. But also happy.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? That went over my head, sorry.
Oh, no, of course. So when we talk about smart signals, there's a couple different investments that make them as smart as they can be. There is both the signal change out and the fiber work. That's sort of why we have it categorized under the signals category as two different kinds of investment. To work their best, you need both pieces, but you can run new technology, just not at full capacity without fiber. So on Lebanon, the smart signal announcement we did on Friday was for the new technology that was not funded by Choose How You Move. That was funded priorly by NDOT funds. The fiber that we will lay that will unlock the full capability of that technology, that is funded by Choose How You Move.
Okay, and maybe I'm just dumbing this down, but so the 68 million that's been spent so far or pulled down, is that just gone towards buses and enhancing the bus services? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, where did you get the 68 mention from? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I'm tracking the right category.
That I would have to email it to you.
Okay.
I'm seeing that 68 million has been collected so far.
Oh, from the collected number. Okay. So no, it did not all go to just procuring buses. So part of what's in front of you, the 104.
Yeah.
That's how we're spending some of what's been collected. The 68 number can, go ahead, Amanda.
So the 68 from, you're talking about previous fiscal year collected. That's where that number comes from. Actually, there's a lot of things that happen with that money, but primarily.
Oh, please tell me, please.
Yeah, so primarily that went to create a reserve fund for WeGo Public Transit, who had never had a reserve fund before. That was in the tip. It was actually programmed to be one of the first things we did because projects were not yet, were in the infancy. And then there is a portion of those dollars also that were programmed for capital as well as operating. And so I will say, you know, the transit impact law actually details that some of those things, it can't all be capital. Any type of service upgrade has to come through the revenue. So increased revenue this year is going to WeGo Public Transit. And so in that $68 million you're specifically talking about, I would say there's unspent capital dollars that haven't been spent yet because we're planning and they're being executed as we go. A lion's share of those are buses, but just like we had the Q jump that was detailed there, as well as some complete street planning and some others, and we can get a list of that for you pretty quickly. And so that's that portion. And then what Sabrina and Michael are talking about now is in the new fiscal year. There was a total of $164 million in the ordinance that you all passed, and about 60 of that was for operating, and much of it, lion's share of it actually goes to WeGo Public Transit, and then to NDOT and ITS and police and other operating or implementing agencies, and then the remainder of that is what is being obligated towards capital. And that's the $104 million that Sabrina is detailing.
God, if you could just send me a breakdown of that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, council member. Next in the queue, Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got what I think is a brief question that you'll probably want to direct to ITS. As we are replacing old damaged conduit and installing new conduit along the right-of-way, are we leaving any capacity there for future expansion of potentially, public sector fiber, but also are we looking at providing conduit space for utility providers to utilize rather than some of the micro trenching and other techniques that we're seeing for them to lay their fiber across today?
So that's a very good question. In some areas, we are investigating the opportunities of putting in expanded fiber conduit network facilities, assets, if you will, in the infrastructure. We have a little bit of that discussion going on right now with the East Bank development. The The challenge with doing that and offering serviceability for carriers, your public carriers, AT&T and Verizon and those others, is how to manage that infrastructure along with the security requirements that we at Metro have, right, as far as who has access to those conduits and things. Mainly because we run an enterprise backbone and we carry everybody's data to include the health department, police department. And so we have both CGIS sensitive data as well as HIPAA sensitive data that runs through that infrastructure. But we are looking at that. For the most part, though, whenever we ITS go in and put in any of those physical assets, we're going to build them out so we have sufficient expandability well into the future. We always put in, a dual pair of 4-inch conduit, just to give you kind of a representation of how much we can actually carry into 4-inch conduit. So our standard for our major routing lines is 288 fiber. That's roughly between 1 inch and 1.25 inches around. So if we have a 4-inch conduit, we could pull many, many trunk lines through a single 4-inch conduit. We do dual pairs so that if we have to pull in and pull out, we have the serviceability feature.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the capacity both for the public sector network and the private stuff and the utility providers is just going to need to skyrocket as every file gets bigger and consumers want more and more stuff. So anything we could do to future-proof there would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Next in the queue, I have council member Benedict and then Webb and Vo.
Thank you, Chair. A friend of mine looked at prior to the referendum, they looked at the map of improvements for Chime and they said, wow, we don't have very many changes here. And I thought that was terrible. And then I looked at District 7 and I don't know what you're getting out of this plan. And so when I think about people from other parts of town, particularly like the West Side or areas where transit ridership, may be maximized already, or it's as good as it's, like it has a lot of investments. I remember that Chime also does deliver things like the enhanced security. I've had a lot of engagement with Captain Williams since he started in March. We've got fiber that we've been talking about. We've got the traffic management center. We've got the Journey Pass and all of those things. When I think about for my constituents, those are enhancements that sales tax increase is delivering for them. So I want to make sure that I'm framing that for my constituents because they might not be seeing as many sidewalks. They might not be seeing as many changes in District 7, but they do have those enhancements. So I want to reassert that. And then so I also want to say Gallatin Pike and Main Street, we talk about that a lot and the priority for BRT there. That has the second highest ridership in the city. But I think the big important thing that we point out is that the city owns that street between 5th Street and Briley Parkway. And so that allows us a lot of flexibility to put that investment in. Plus it's a project that had been started long before Chime. So there'd been a bit of investment there. Having said that, I share the concerns about Murfreesboro Pike, which has the highest ridership. Gallatin is right after that. So as my council member said earlier, or my colleague said earlier, especially Councilmember Suara mentioned, shifting priorities. I guess it's a 15-year plan. Do you anticipate that at some point Murfreesboro Pike could get reprioritized back to the top?
Since we're kicking off work for Gallatin, Nolensville, and downtown, in the coming weeks and months, I want to make sure I'm looking at you. There isn't a path for Murfreesboro to leapfrog those other ones, but again, I think we have yet to prioritize the rest of the corridors. And so I would imagine that it would be very shortly, kicking that work would come shortly after in that priority order, if that makes sense.
It does. I think what I'm getting at is from, I think across this body, there probably is a desire to make sure that that area of the city where there is the highest ridership, where there is the highest need, that gets prioritized. I think that most of this body would agree with that. Even though we want more services in our areas, I think it's important that where there is the need, that you're able to address that as best as you can and adjust and reprioritize that as you go by. So, Chair, thank you.
And I think that's partially why we're focused on sort of that continuous improvement or finding other ways to make the impact beyond sort of the broader corridor work, if that makes sense.
Councilmember Webb.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I want to go back to what I would like to see sent out based on what Ms. Ellis was talking about. The 68 million was the revenue brought in through the end of July. I don't know what the revenue is brought into the end of the year, but I would like to know that along with what has been earmarked in detail, like sidewalks, you know, it says 31 million. Well, is there a list of anywhere who got sidewalks? You know, maybe direct us to a website or something. That's what I would like to see. Second of all, let me see, my second question was, if we can get that, that would help. And then ridership, since we bought and how much money we spent on buses, how much has the ridership increased since we added the buses, not including the free rides? I want it separated. You know, how many paid riders? And if it's increased by 100, how many of them were paid riders and how many of those were free riders? I'd like to see if the investment is paying for itself at this point, okay? And then my last question is Gallatin Road, you know, the north side of Gallatin Road. When I first met with NDOT and we started talking about this, can you tell me what's going to go on up there? Is the Rivergate Mall project going to slow that down a little bit? At one time, I was told that the outer, I don't know what you call it, not the lane, but the sidewalk, or it's no sidewalk really, was going to become a dedicated bus lane. Can you tell me what's going to go on up there? Has that changed any? Thank you.
Yes, Councilman, and I can speak to that, and would also, if Derek Haggerty with NDOT wants to chime in, if I leave something off, just please do. So correct, there is still a project on the north end towards Rivergate, so that's in between Altaloma Boulevard and then close to the Rivergate Walmart there. That's funded through a different grant, so it's not through Choose How You Move. And it goes through the TDOT local programs process. What that is proposed to do is to add side running, so kind of where the shoulder is today, allowing the bus to run in a dedicated lane in that area, help to bypass some of the traffic that gets bogged down at Myatt Drive and Gallatin Pike there. That is still several years away because that local programs process is a bit longer, but that's a good example of how like a medium-term improvement might come first, and then we come back and do some of the all-access corridor improvements for the final capital project.
All right, I believe Councilmember Vo is the last in the queue, and we are over time, so Councilmember Vo.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be quick. Thank you all so much for the presentation. I just had a couple questions regarding the sidewalks that I see in Benton Avenue and Fort Negley Boulevard. Can y'all let us know, when is that going to begin? Can someone answer?
See if Derek, can you chime in?
Yes, Derek Haggerty with NDOT. Benton Avenue is actually one of the first ones going to construction. We have 6 sidewalks in Chime Year 1 that have been deemed quick builds. We have existing stormwater infrastructure in place. So we're actually in the process of cutting a construction PO right now. Fort Negley, I don't have a timeline yet, but that'll move pretty quickly as well. Currently coordinating with Metro Parks to see how that fits into their vision document and how we can partner on that project to deliver a sidewalk quickly that meets their overall master planning intent.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I was wondering, like, whenever, like, I know all of our council members want to know what's happening in their district, what's going on. Will Chime or will someone be kind of informing us? Because I think the biggest thing is we want to inform our constituents that this is working for the city. And so if y'all can work with me offline so we can have these dates. And then I also wanted to discuss the, thank you so much with regarding the street suite, the complete streets with the $11.8 million investment. Can someone answer the question on when the reconstruction will start there? from Edgehill to Chestnut from 21st.
I can take that one as well. The Chestnut portion will go into construction first, estimating early April to break ground. Edgehill will follow on the back end of that. So you'll essentially see it as one project, but the Chestnut portion first, followed by Edgehill.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Those are my questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, council member, and seeing no more questions. We are over time. Meeting adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.